Welcome, everyone, to Someone Gets Me. Today, I have an expert on creating great experience and meaningful value in life. Diem Mooney comes to us from Maryland, and I actually kind of hunted him down. And I know I've never done this before, but what I did was I was on LinkedIn, and every time I was there, I saw something of great value that he was posting. And it inspired me for the first time in my life to reach out to somebody and say, I have got to talk to you because it means a lot to all of us, right? To engage with somebody who understands meaning and value. So we're going to talk to Diem today about creating meaning and value in our lives and how to do that in a way, even when maybe the world doesn't see it the same way we might. He is the Chief Experience Officer at his company, which I think is the coolest title ever. And I want to hear about that too. But first, Diem, I want to welcome you to Someone Gets Me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here.
I'm so happy you said yes. So tell us a little bit about you, like where you were raised or how
Sure.
has your life been? And then I have some other very interesting questions, but give us a little background.
Sure. So I was actually born and raised in Alabama, very rural area in the country. So Southern guy. I am one of four, so I have some siblings that actually currently live in the South, still now in Alabama. Um, I was diagnosed with autism at the age of 5. I was nonverbal for a very long time and had some delays with like learning issues and social interactions. So it made my upbringing very interesting, considering that I had a lot of challenges with emotional intelligence, communication, social interactions. But ultimately, I ended up skipping several grades and graduating high school early. So I was 15 years old. Um, Went to college and realized very quickly I had no clue what I was doing, as someone that young. Like a year in, I joined the Navy. So I decided I'm just going to go to the Navy and figure some things out. It's not typical choice of someone who has autism to, definitely choose a route like that. But I really wanted to just go for it and expand my horizons. So I joined the military and ended up traveling all over the world. I've lived in pretty much every state on the East Coast, like up and down the East Coast. Been, deployed, got a lot of experience, exposed to a lot of different cultures. They're definitely diverse way of thinking when you start getting outside of a bubble there. And it's actually what really intrigued me into better understanding psychology and, the social interactions of other people and the emotional nuances and communication and all of that. So I ended up, going to grad school for psychology. That's my PhD in psychology. So that's kind of where I am right now. As you just mentioned, I did start my own company centered around understanding experiences, organizational or customer based experiences for products and websites, basically anything you can think of. And I do serve as a CXO, so the experience officer for that. I'm not the CEO. Um, and that's where I am right now.
Oh, that is so amazing. So today, in today's world, we would call you as an individual with neurodiversity.
Yes.
And that's a big topic these days. But I'll bet when you were in rural Alabama as a child, that was not a common conversation.
No. Yeah. No. Definitely not. Definitely not.
So would you consider yourself highly sensitive and very kind of emotionally intense as well?
Um, hmm, I would say that I am pretty monotone a lot of times. I suppose I'm indifferent to quite a lot. However, when I am triggered, then it's very intense, like agitation, and I lose concentration and focus a lot
Mhm.
when I am triggered. But of course, even right now, for 27 years old, my entire life, I've had a behavioral analyst who's helped me
Mm.
and basically helped me with managing some of these things, these triggers, and identifying them before they come, determine my threshold even before engaging socially with certain people. I like to always run by her first, and we run through scenarios so I'm more comfortable. So definitely did a lot of things to help better accommodate and assimilate in situations.
Oh, that's like called being proactive and really
Exactly.
working with
Yes.
things. So I have a question about the Navy.
Sure.
Um, was the structure of the Navy supportive and good for you, or did you find it like tricky and challenging as far as adjusting and dealing with people
Sure.
and, authority, that kind of thing?
Sure. So when I first was coming on, of course, and like they're like, I don't know if you can do this. Like to be honest, it's a lot of engagement and understanding and being around people and teams and all that. So I did go through pretty intense behavioral management, like where they trying to train me on different coping skills and identifying certain facial expressions, all that kind of stuff to help me prepare for it. But when I got into the military, I would say boot camp was a little bit challenging at first to figure out, what was going on. So much going on at one time. But to be honest, the military is so structured and so predictable that, to be honest, actually it's very easy for me to jump in and say, oh, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. If I do this, this will be the reaction. In real life, it's a lot more unpredictable. Sometimes
Right.
social interactions can go a lot of different directions. In the military, it's going to go the same way every single time, no matter what you do, essentially. So you can expect, if I got the answer right, I'm going to do push-ups. If I got the answer wrong, I'm going to do push-ups. So to be honest, it actually worked really well through boot camp. And so when I ended up deploying or just being in the fleet, for me, I had a very unique experience because I essentially served as the civilian equivalent of a business analyst. So I was always serving as a consultant for other agencies. So I was by myself. I didn't work as a team. I didn't actually really, I was always kind of running my own show, doing my own thing. And I traveled a lot. So it was just always just me traveling from this state to this agency, this agency.
Mm.
So I didn't have to really interact with too many people outside of a meeting. And then I kind of just did them out. So had a very unique experience to where I had a very I didn't wear a uniform. I very rarely, I wore civilian clothes every day, so yeah, I had a very untraditional military career. And I did that, for 5 years. And I did decide ultimately, what I want to do in my career, that it didn't fit staying in the military anymore. So that's why I got out and went, pursued my PhD.
Oh, that's awesome. Where did you get your PhD?
Walden University.
Nice.
Yep,
That's
online. Yeah, do another thing with social interactions. I was originally got into the University of Buffalo, and I was going to attend there. And I went through and was going through a course, and I can't do very well in classroom settings. Same way I told you when I in high school, they took me out of classroom. I could never assimilate to classrooms. So I was very excited to see that there was an online program at that level for someone like me.
right. And so you could excel and use all your skills and not have to have all of those other things that would have made it very
Very
difficult or even
exactly.
impossible.
Yes.
That that's amazing. I just think that's so exciting. So you tell me a little bit about how you handle it when people don't understand you. Like if you're in a situation maybe and somebody like doesn't get you,
Sure.
how do you handle that? And that's like one of the number one things that listeners to this podcast ask about is they kind of feel misunderstood by the world or
Sure. Sure.
maybe just not understood. So do you
Sure.
have any ideas of what you could suggest for people?
Of course. So I would say that for me, I know my divergent behaviors. Like I know what qualifies or quantifies me as a divergent. So like, with my speech pattern or with some of my mannerisms or when I become nonverbal, I know what they are already going for because introspection. Like I look within myself and say, okay, what makes me different or what makes people confused by my behavior? What makes people confused with how they interact with me, right? I think about it for myself, take the emotions out of it and say simply, this is what makes me different. And then if I already know going forward this was maybe different, then I can, communicate that to people in advance. So what I do is when I work with my clients, that I don't keep it a secret. I am completely upfront with them, like, hey, I am autistic. I have, limitations when it comes to sensory issues. So I can't be in your office if it's, loud, if it's open floor plan where people are going to interact with me. There's, unexpected conversations are going to be coming to I let them know right up front and say, look, this is what this is. This is how I define this. This is what it looks like to me because it looks different for everybody. And that way I kind of levels to expectations and manage some of that beforehand. So then when they see like, oh, well, your DM's different, but he's explained to me this is what, or they can communicate to other people in their team saying, look, DM is different and this is what it may look like. So I'm not always shaking hands saying, hey, I'm DM and I'm weird, essentially, so to avoid, actually, I don't shake hands. So that's another thing too, basically. So I let people know up front, if you're honest with yourself, and you know who you are, it makes it really easy for you to be able to communicate that to other people and for them to basically have to respect it. Like if you want me on your team, this is who I am. This is a full picture of who DM is. I'm not just the strategist who can, save you millions of dollars. I'm also this as well. And, we have to work alongside each other to make sure that I am able, mentally and cognitively able to do my job for you. So it's kind of how
Exactly. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I love your comment about taking the emotion out of it and using introspection and like, this is just what it is.
Yep.
And though you may have an autism diagnosis and you have these different I call them like quirky challenges and things of the diversity, that those though are your assets. Those are your superpowers that make you so brilliant at what you do. And other people around us, we have to learn to appreciate those kinds of diversity. And some people take a little longer than others to get it,
Yes,
but
exactly. Yeah.
it takes a lot of personal understanding and awareness to be able to talk about it up front like you do, and to be able to be comfortable in going, yep, my neurology is a bit different than yours. And let me show you where that skill set really lands. So
exactly. Yep.
taking the emotion out of it is a key. I agree with you. I think it's a key thing. So how do you handle transition? Like, because transition's a big thing for us gifted people and neurodiverse visionary types. Autism or not autism, transition's tricky for those of us who are wired a bit different.
Sure.
And so what are some things you do to help yourself move from A to B?
Sure. So actually, I do have a funny story for that one. So I'm going to start with the positive part, the good one. So I manage, so certain types of transitions I do very well and very adaptable and very custom when it comes to and like large scale, complex processes and systems that I am completely fine with, So essentially, my behavioral analyst kind of describes it as if you, basically if you were to see 1,000-piece puzzle, and everyone else like organizing by colors and trying to figure out how, the frame. And she's like, but for you, Dim, like the way you describe it is like, if you pour it out, you've kind of already visualized the entire picture without seeing the picture. So you at a high level, regardless of the changes and all the processes underneath it, you already know what everything's gonna look like at the end. So with that, it makes it very easy. So if problems come, or I'm working with a client and suddenly like, oh no, this happened. I'm like, it's fine. It's part of the process, so it's really easy for me to be the level-headed person, constantly saying none of this matters. Stick to the major goal. At the same point, though, which again makes me good for a client, for a strategist, or for a psychologist, it makes me terrible though at home. So, see, my wife and me were just dealing with this. So, we were going grocery shopping today earlier, and so she bought a bunch of new products, like new things that we haven't tried before. And so it ended up costing like it was more things. So our pantry, I organize it. I organize exactly how it should be because I need to be able to know exactly where things are. And so she was like, well, we're going to put our son's soups, like he has little soups, in this cabinet over here across the kitchen. And I was like, I can't do that. There's no way it doesn't go there. And I was like freaking out because, again, that's why I couldn't be in classrooms. I need to be able to structure things that in my mind are the way that it should go. And I'm not adaptable, I'm not very flexible in transitioning things around my living space. So she was like, okay. She's like, but we don't have room. So like, we're gonna have to figure a plan here. And I was just like, I could feel myself like my blood boiling over. Like, I can't imagine this being anywhere else but this very specific spot. So like taking the time to, she definitely helps me with this a lot, taking time like to pause and say, okay, let's really think about a solution here to like how we can accommodate the fact that we no longer can, keep your system. The one that you have, it doesn't work anymore because we're running out of room. And so our solution was that we ended up coming with, after I did some breathing exercises, would be that we just take everything out of the pantry right now, from shelf to shelf. Everything comes out, and we would now create a new processes right now based off what we have, so we can start from scratch. So essentially, that's kind of what we're working on now, like starting from scratch versus trying to at a level, like a small level, trying to move things around because it makes me like pretty crazy. So again, big projects and complicated organizational structures, I'm great with transitioning, but small things like your kitchen and noodles being in the wrong place, clearly I freak out. So
that's the perfect example, because I'm sitting here listening to you going, it is easier for somebody with your complex ability to see the big picture to pull it all out and make a new plan than it is to try to change little pieces of it and keep track of all those little moving pieces. And where it all is. That'd be like to the brain, exactly. Right? I heard recently somebody say, a teenager actually that I'm working with, and he said, don't call us all gifted or neurodiverse or whatever, because it sounds like we're being elitist. Exactly. And I'm like, well, actually, the truth is what you just said. There is another side of it that's very challenging and very difficult, and all of us are different in how we do it. So there's no two that are the same, but yet the commonality is it might look genius. You might want to have our genius on the outside, but there's also this other side of what has to happen moment to moment, day to day, in
Exactly.
order to keep functioning in a way that has meaning and value and can be happy, right?
Exactly. Yep. Yes, that assimilation piece, I feel like that's what I'm constantly battling with, trying to assimilate with whatever situation based off of perceived social norms. That's probably my biggest challenge at any given moment, sitting around people and they're, laughing. Like, I've gotten pretty good at it, like knowing when to laugh and knowing when to gesture, knowing when to change my tone. However, it's a lot of brain power going for a conversation that for more people's, like whatever. I'm over here like working through it and preparing for the responses, and it's a big ordeal for me. And it is a lot of work. People are like, oh, you're charming, you seem great, but they're not seeing the back end of exactly how exhausting it is for me to do that. So
right, it's a lot of mental processing, and you are
yes,
charming, and I watch everything and talking to you. You're exactly in person talking here like I imagined
I try to be.
when I saw the pictures, and I watch you. I watch what you put up on LinkedIn because that's such meaning and depth. And I knew, I'm like, oh, there's depth in there, and it is exhausting, mentally exhausting to have to keep up with all of those things constantly. So we
Yeah,
got to have downtime and
of
regeneration
course.
time. And I want to talk a little bit about the whole idea of diversity
Okay.
and difference and the value that people bring to the table, because you don't look like the typical psychologist,
Do
the
not.
old dude, that doesn't understand anything, that's like sitting across the table and all stoic and all of that noise. And I find it quite refreshing and wonderful.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sure when people hear that you're a psychologist, somebody who might not have any awareness might look at you funny, like you have three heads.
Oh
And
yes, all the time.
and I ran it, and the reason why I want to talk about this is because when I was ordained as a minister in 2000, and when I told a friend of mine that I was ordained, and literally he fell off the chair he was on. Like, women can't be ministers, like he just lost it.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm like, oh, I didn't think of that. I was a bit way more naive then than I am now.
Mhm.
Um, and so any kind of diversity, but especially like here you are, a psychologist, you're chief experience officer, you've been in the Navy, and you came out of rural Alabama for, like, think about that for just a minute, like that
Yeah. Very
trajectory,
poor, like less than poor, poor in
less than
Alabama. Yeah.
poor, with an autism diagnosis, with nobody really understanding you, going to college early and nobody knowing how to help you through that. And you found your own way by continuing to keep going in that perseverance. And so there's value in you transcending all of those limited things that were around you in the culture.
Yeah.
And you really appreciate diversity, as do I. So
I do.
would you speak a little bit to the whole topic of the value of diversity in person and in business, like just in
Sure.
general?
Sure. I would say, just of course, like you pointed out, my experiences in life has of course greatly impacted my perspective on the topic. Considering, I guess for me, the biggest thing that I guess I took away from considering my own, limitations, my own, experiences, with like poverty and my upbringing and all of that, and where I am now. Big takeaway that I got was that you really can't judge people, based off of any of those things, because essentially any one of those things, if you say, oh, this person, is poor, or this person has learning disability, because essentially I was in a special needs program in school because they're like, you can't learn. I can't sit in the classroom and learn. So you have learning disability. You have learning challenges. If anyone saw me on paper and saw those things, they're like, okay, they write me off. They say, this person's not qualified for this. This person's not competent. This person's not able to do these things. And then I was faced with basically saying that you're not going to be in a relationship, you're not going to maintain healthy relationships, you're not going to be able to maintain a job, because how can you? You can't go into an organization and just have them switch around all this stuff for you. That's not the way it works. And you're not going to be able to be successful in these areas because your capacity for learning and ability to understand is too limited. So basically, if I were to look at someone else and say the same thing, saying, oh well, like say, oh, you don't have enough money, or you're not enough in your experience, you don't have these things, that I'm basically writing them off the same way that I was written off. But to be honest, again, it's not a true measure of anything, and it taught me basically to really evaluate if a situation or a person more holistically, and really think about what actually truly matters versus what doesn't. Does the skin color matter? No, it is not a determinant of anything. Does their belief system and their religious belief matter? It does not measure their character. Doesn't measure their performance. Doesn't measure their morals. It doesn't really measure their values. Their upbringing, their socioeconomic status. Does that measure anything? No. Essentially, that's what I took away from it. I'm saying that all the things that were used against me to tell me I wasn't going to do well, or I wasn't going to succeed, they were actually not very accurate measurements or predictions of my success. So then I took away as, you know what, I'm not going to do the same thing to other people, because now an opportunity to freshly hire someone. Am I evaluating someone's performance? If I'm going to bring them on, I look at it again like that. I actually have I know people tell me a very unique way of onboarding someone to my company. It's not a traditional interview or resume. There's no resume at all, actually, process, because the way I look at it is, I don't want to box someone in. That's why I always say outgrow the box. I don't want to box someone in assuming that I have all of the metrics and all of the measures that can basically say you need this and this and this for you to be successful. Because again, from my experience in my life, people kept giving me these metrics and giving me these measures, saying, if you don't meet these, you're not going to be successful. And then turns out they were all wrong. Mm-hmm. So with diversity, I just really look at it as holistically looking at that person for who they are in a whole lot of different ways, more ways than probably anyone can really think about, and say, take all of this into consideration and really see how you can help them develop, or, how that person, benefit or values you, or what values they actually bring to your life. And that's how you technically, assess someone. Doesn't matter what they look like, doesn't matter what they believe in, doesn't matter, I don't know, any other, the limitations that they have, cognitively, mentally. That doesn't really give you a whole picture if you only isolate yourself on focusing only on one of those things.
Right. I agree. And it's funny because I think when people hear that word diversity, they think it's only about race or only about sexuality, exactly, or only about like this one thing. Just like when I hear the word neurodiversity, people think it's only about brain, but it's really about all of our nervous system. Mm-hmm. And so often that happens. People get stuck in this either or, this A, B, and they miss the fact, mm-hmm, that everyone is their whole unique, amazing, beautiful person.
Exactly. And there's so much more to someone.
So much more. And so you said you have a different way of onboarding and bringing people onto your company. Now I'm curious. Sure. You might want to tell everybody a little bit about your company, and then sure, I want to hear how you do it, because I have a feeling it's going to be really fun.
Sure. So I had a coaching and consulting company. It's called Carpe Noctem, a play on my name being Diem Mooney. So like Carpe Diem, Carpe Noctem, Mooney, my last name Moon. So it's a coaching consulting firm. So basically, again, focusing on just experience, the human experience, whether it be organizational, working with, one-on-one coaching sessions for personal development, all this type of things. So with that being said, I bring a lot of different types of people, someone, coaches, consultants, researchers, designers, anyone, because to solve a lot of different experience problems, you need a lot of different expertise in order to do that. So how I do it though is essentially like, even I just really use like LinkedIn a lot, where I'm like, okay, anyone interested in working with me, I take on projects related to the topic of the industry. Like, like one of them be UX, and, I have some UX projects coming down the line, anyone interested and, willing to learn, because I always put that in there, willing to learn, you just shoot me an email. And basically what I do is I have them fill out this questionnaire. I don't know anything about them at this point. They simply receive a link saying, fill this questionnaire out. We're asking them general information. The questions are not about their background actually at all. I don't actually ask them for how many experience they have or anything. What I ask them about is their questions that measure their ability, their aptitude for learning, and then their professional development goals. So essentially asking them more questions like, are you interested in learning more about user experience? Are you interested in learning more about project management? That's why I get research, so I understand exactly what it is that they're looking to gain from the experience. And then I'll ask them questions more. So like, are you willing to sit in 2 trainings or 4 trainings or 8 trainings, because certain projects take more training in order for you to understand. So they're saying, well, I only have time for 2 trainings. That already tell me, okay, this level project is better for them because they only have the time in order to take on this type of project. So again, it's more development based versus what they already know. What they already know is great. But for my company, we are expanding on a lot of times very new ideas, very new processes, very new concepts. So what in the past is great, but let's focus on what you're willing to learn in the future, so that way we can continue to grow in the company and be innovative. I don't know what they look like. Yeah, I don't know what they look like. I don't know the education level. I don't really know much about them aside from what are you willing to learn? That's what
Their name, you know their name, and you know if they're willing to learn.
Yes, exactly, and their interests and with their career interests. Because I do a lot of professional development. Part of so I work with I only do 1099s right now, and not because necessarily I couldn't even afford to bring on W2s. The way I look at it is as I don't believe that you have to be loyal to one company. I don't feel like in order for you to gain something beyond a paycheck that you require this like you can't leave, you have to work here 9 to 5, you're mine, right? The way I look at it is like no, look. I will provide you professional development opportunities, which I help them with, like invoicing. How do you determine your value in that, your rate, or how do you communicate your experience to other people, like as far as portfolios, and how do you brand yourself in order to get next opportunity. So those type of things, I'm like, you don't need to feel like you're owned by this company, my company, in order for you to continue to grow. With all you could do is if you do one project and you say, look, I have one project down and I've gotten all these trainings down and I'm ready to do my own thing. I'm completely fine with that, and I really wish you the best of luck, and of course support you and writing letter of recognition or whatever you need. But I feel like a lot of the onboarding process is around the idea of this person stay with me forever. So I need to have all these arbitrary, questions that I'm going to ask them about what would you do in this situation, or if you're a fruit, what kind of fruit are you? Because I want you to stay forever and you're mine now. I don't really have that level of possessiveness over these individuals. Instead, I'm like, I'll help you grow as you help me grow. This is a mutual growth opportunity. So with that being said, are you willing to grow? And if so, let me understand where you're willing to grow so I can place you in the right project. So that way you're still engaged and you're still happy with where you are and you feel like you are growing. So then you will in response, do the best you can to make this project work. And I don't want to lose my client. So you're going to do your job,
Right.
That's how I kind of look at it.
I love it. It's so refreshing. It's so refreshing. And I think it's called for out in the workplace much more. And
Yeah,
I hope some people learn from you by watching you on and everywhere, because
I appreciate it.
it's so refreshing. I'm listening to you going, well, I want to work with him. Like I want to do stuff. I want to do a project with him. Like, because I just think that you're onto something. And I think it's because instead of getting all dejected and throwing your life away like people wanted or didn't know what to do, you kept finding the solution, and your soul just kept going, and you kept using your tenacity and your brilliance to keep like kind of shining the diamond, so to speak,
Yeah, I'm
And
trying.
it's very inspiring. It gives me hope for the future. I can tell you that, like just in
Thank
general,
you.
like, yay.
Yeah, I will say this approach did. I actually didn't even realize it at first because I didn't consider it, but it did actually create a very diverse workforce without technically putting any DEI particular practices. Like I didn't ask any questions about what's your race or anything like that. I didn't actually ask those questions until after the fact. It wasn't never really truly considered. It was more so where again I was basing it off of simply again growth opportunities. So then I did a survey for the employees. I'm like, hey, this is all voluntary, but could you provide some demographic information? It turned out that my workforce actually is very, very diverse, and so opposed, so I feel like a lot of times too, even when you're trying to be diverse, when you're trying to push a lot of these initiatives, there are still unconscious biases that will limit you, and then you're like more quota based. Like, okay, I'm just gonna hire 4 people of this religion. I make sure I have 3 people, and you kind of like check off a box. So
Right.
you're not really that diverse. It's simply saying I'm meeting a quota. But when you completely take it off and just say, look, dude, this is not a consideration. We're not trying to quantify it and say this is our limit because you're again capping it. You're capping your diversity. Only saying, are you looking to grow with me in my company? Yes. Then perfect. Let's figure out where you want to grow. And, no, then we'll wait to opportunity where you are willing to grow, And nothing is actually, I don't do internships either. Like I don't believe in them. I think that, it's just not a model that I think that is fair to the individual. I don't want to call someone an intern because I'm like, your next opportunity, I don't want you to have an issue with saying, you know what, let's, you're not qualified for internship, for entry level, because interns, it varies what they actually do. And because of the condition of what an intern is, I don't want to be on the resume to where they're saying, you've been an intern for a year, you're still not qualified to do anything else but be an intern, essentially. You're a professional intern now. So instead, I'll give them the title that in the industry is equivalent to what they're actually doing. Like, look, if you are a researcher, you're a researcher for me. And you are actually going to be treated like a researcher, going to be paid like a researcher, and I'll give you all the training to make sure that you are actually a researcher before you're done with this project. That's the way I look at it. So they again, when they leave my company, they are a researcher who's been doing it for X amount of months, and that's what they can move forward with instead of being called an intern who's just observing.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that point up. That's really valuable because I know when I was first starting out, there was a lot of that, and a lot of people even today I hear them. In fact, the other day I was going, I really need to hire some extra people, and I've heard just get some interns. They'll work for you for nothing. And I'm like, well, first of
Exactly.
all, I don't want that consciousness,
Yeah.
and I want to support other people in growing and moving and doing whatever. And
Exactly.
it's not necessary, to follow some of those limiting ways and limiting our own companies and limiting the people and trying to fit ourselves in a box that doesn't exist for us anyway.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. I don't want people leaving my company being professional interns. That's not what I want. I don't want that. So, that's again why I focus so much on growth and really, again, expanding beyond this particular project, this particular moment in your life. Where do you want to be next? And that's what I'm always trying to make sure they're mindful of. Like, you're comfortable in this position right now. Obviously you're working full time in this project, but what about your next one? Or what do you want to do next? What job title are you going to hold? Do you want to increase your education? What certification? What training? Constantly thinking about that. And actually, so this another is a CEO of another company. He told me, he's like, but if you do that, he's like, you do know you're molding them to leave you. He's like, you're basically, creating this factory of perfect choices and then just throwing them out. And then I'm like, well, yes. And it's like, that's exactly the intention, like the intention is not to hold on tightly to everyone and to stifle their growth so that way they'll stay with you. Instead, it is to have them grow and, and to get so big to where, maybe it actually expands the type of projects I can work on. Because if I go from people who are more entry level, right, and then they are now mid-level, they have all this training that they know everything I know, then that means that now I can take on more complicated projects under my own firm and, charge more money for them, expand my services because now I have so many people who do so many different things. That's the way I look at it. I'm like, as they're growing, I look at it as I'm growing too, not that, I'm just throwing out all these resources away. So, different perspectives, but that's the way I look at it.
Right. Well, I know an employer who I was sitting in on an interview with them, and he was interviewing this person, and she said something about how many hours was it or whatever. And he goes, well, and very quietly goes, well, I like to own my people. So I want you to be totally dedicated to me.
Yeah.
And I remember my stomach flipping.
Yeah.
Because
Totally
I knew this person, but I'd never heard it come out of their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, like it was very off-putting. Mm-hmm. And I was, and later on, I said, you create this mess that you're in by trying to own people.
Mm-hmm.
And the person smiled and said, I know. And it wasn't long after that I said, okay, well, we're not going to be in professional realms together anymore because once that card was shown, the undisclosed agenda, it was very off-putting because I think the world's always expanding and we're all always expanding and growing. And so to think anyone's going to stay stuck or stay the same is goofy.
Or to want someone who feels that way. My attitude is I don't want anyone, working with me or even under me who feels stuck, who feels like they're stifled in their own growth. Because, like, why would I want someone there's like that level of resentment, that level of disengagement that comes with it. And that's not something that I even want for my team, that definitely impacts retention more so than, a lot of other factors, to be honest. I'd rather have someone who is, I'm motivated to grow. I'm really looking forward to working in a team. I feel like there's so many opportunities for me. That's the type of, person that we're looking for. But everyone wants that kind of talent. But they also have policies around like, oh, well, it takes you 12 months before you can get, compensation for education. Or we're not going to provide this training to you until you get to this level in company. It's like it's a game or something. Like, you hit levels and stuff before you get prizes. And it's like, what is like, but it's the whole purpose is to keep you there engaged for 5 years before you finally get to the point that that you're wanting to get to. And I'm like, no, as a matter of fact, you don't have to work on any project with my company. If you email me and you're part of the list, then if I have a training, you're allowed to come to the training regardless. I do like very in-depth for research a lot of times because, a lot of, people, they don't have proper training and research, not everyone has a PhD, not everyone goes to grad school to learn such things. So that's a really big topic that a lot of times I'll go through and teach people who are outside of research, not even researchers. Anyone's like, I want to understand, how do you collect data? How do you understand your company's, or employee feedback or customer reviews? How do you really truly analyze it? I do a lot of those and just provide training to people who are looking to learn, because those type of people I want around me. If you're attending those trainings with me, if you're, involved, then you're exactly the type of person who I want around me, because you're continuing to grow.
Mm-hmm.
The same difference, if you have something that I don't know, I would love for you to share that with the group and share with everyone, so we can all learn together. It's more like a community versus, again, this level you have to hit. Like, only if you hit 3 projects, can you get invited to this training, and only if you're this level, the role, can you get access to this. I just think that's ridiculous. So that's just my opinion.
I totally agree with you. It's so refreshing. Like, yes, like, duh. Okay.
Yeah.
So, a little bit of, I have a couple of questions that are coming to me that are a little bit more personal related.
Sure.
What does Diem do for fun? What do you do for fun and like enjoyment?
So to be honest, for me, anytime I can like turn off my brain, it's very rare that I'm capable of doing such things. So for me, because of my sensory issues, especially auditory, I like to listen to music. Like putting headphones in, noise canceling headphones really help me. So during those times, I'll go for like a walk. And I really, really enjoy going for like walks and hikes a lot. And working out, because then that's another thing where I put headphones in and do something very repetitive and mindless. So it allows me to just kind of shut off, my consciousness for a little bit.
Right.
So that's probably the things that I do the most often. Like I'll try to, especially days where I have constant meetings, because of so much social interaction and so much communication. And again, processing how to talk and who to talk to, and how, that I'll break up my day by going for like an hour long walk and coming back and then saying, okay, I'm reset now. I can draw, and I suppose it's fine, but it's not really fun for me. It's more related to I'm a savant as well. I can just photocopy things that I see. It just takes a lot of brain power to do it. So it's like, I don't know, it's kind of exhausting afterwards. So I wouldn't say it's fun, but it's something I do as like maybe a hobby. Mm-hmm. And I also play instruments. Piano was the first that at 5 years old that they realized that I was playing pretty much perfect classical music. So I kind of stayed with piano for a while, but I also play like guitar and like ukulele, banjo, viola. But I have a guitar and ukulele here that I kind of pick up randomly and we'll play. So those are kind of my things.
I love it. I love that. You make so much sense. I do the same thing. What kind of music do you listen to when you're on your walks or you're working out?
Sure. So I feel like I have different music for like different reasons. So I like listening to classical music, especially with piano solos when I'm driving, because it helps me to like stop processing so much at one time. I can get overwhelmed even driving sometimes. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about a million different things, conversations, and not focusing on the road. So I listen to classical music because it kind of mellows me out. Ever since I was a kid, it's actually why they put a piano in front of me. It helped me a lot to do that. I also like listening to like indie bands because of the guitar piece. I really like listening to the very specific instrument and then replicating it on my own, like figuring out how to play it. And I like listening to R&B, like very relaxing R&B, like reggae, like the more slow paced reggae as well. Anything again that kind of just like mellows me out. My workout music is actually very slow. People are like, "That's workout music for you." Like, this is my workout music, very slow.
Because you don't understand how fast it's going on in here, buddy.
Exactly. How fast I'm talking is a fraction of how fast this is going in my brain right now.
The processing's moving a little quick, so we're slowing it down.
Exactly. Yes.
Yep. Oh, it's funny. Most of my clients are musicians or musically inclined, and I'm sitting here listening to you. And I just interviewed. I've had several professional musicians on the show, and I usually ask, okay, so what do you listen to? Like, really,
Sure.
I love classical music as well. There's something about it that just harmonizes the brain. Mm-hmm. And my mom was a classical pianist. And so when I was younger, she used to play mostly Chopin and Bach in the nighttime. And I would go to sleep to that. And I never, we didn't know back then that it was important or it mattered. And then later on, I'm like, I know all of it,
Yeah.
She played it for me when I was a kid, and I love it. It's so soothing. It's so soothing, Oh, that's wonderful. And so what's your favorite thing to do with your son?
Oh man,
he's
is
cute.
An interesting guy. Yes, I will say with him, man, he keeps my life interesting. He's like, Dad, you like processes? Forget all of that. So he definitely very quickly and very swiftly changed my life. So I would say with him, a lot of times I'll like go in his room and just kind of like, it's really funny. Like we'll play like these little games with like his like stuffed animals where like there are characters, and then he keeps me on my toes because like you never know where the conversation is going to go with him. First we're talking about sitting in a restaurant and like hanging out, and this it's a superhero coming in and flying in. So he has this grand imagination that it makes it, again, like it's impossible for me to ever predict and know how to ever assimilate with him. And it's crazy because before I hated that about interaction with people. Like I did not like it if I couldn't figure out who they were, how to grasp it, and how to be 10 steps ahead. But with him, I've learned to like just cherish that a fact about him, that he has that ability on me that no one else has, to like really shift my perception and force me to be in the moment and live in that moment and try to figure out how to react in that moment. How do I feel in that moment? It can't be premeditated. It can't be prepared. So when we're like sitting here, the small little thing like with the animal and talking about a scenario and this whole like play that he's now created, following along with his storylines is always very, very interesting. And something we do like all the time now. So I really enjoy it.
That's amazing. It's like he's this angel that showed up in your life and what a beautiful connection.
Yeah, that's actually I think about all the time, and I remember talking about this in one of my other interviews. Was that I remember growing up, and even as a young adult, I was told that it'd be very challenging for me to have a kid, like to be able because of my lack of understanding of those nuances. They're like, well, a kid can't communicate to you why they're feeling this way. A kid can't clearly communicate to you what they're feeling and why they're feeling. They can't break it down for you to understand. Because that's what I need a lot of times. I need people to really explain to me. And my wife, she's very patient with me, and she does. And even for other people, she's like, oh, they're doing this because this reason, this reason why. And what you could do is X, Y, and Z. But with a kid, he can't do that with me. He doesn't have the words. He doesn't have the understanding yet. So it's going to be very challenging for you to raise a kid with you not being able to, be there for him and, teach him these things. And, but I've learned though, like with him, I feel like it is challenging. Definitely it's hard at times, but I feel like that he's probably my biggest accomplishment. The fact that, he's 5 years old and we've made it work. Like I figured it out. Like just again, hard. It's definitely a lot of sessions with my therapist. I'm like, okay, I really need some help here because I don't understand what's going on. But I just feel like the connection I built with him, it was something that I was always told I would not be able to do. And we do have it. And, I'm just really proud of that.
That's wonderful. And, you're a living example of the power of having people in your corner, having a team in your corner. Your behavior analyst, you have your wife, you have people who believe in you, who you're allowing yourself to be coachable, right?
Exactly.
And
knowing your limitations, the introspection piece.
Yep. And it's moving forward together kind of as a community, that we all have our own piece to it, but you have to be open and willing and teachable in order to be successful. If you would have closed your mind down at any point, it would have stopped all of the beauty that you're experiencing now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's wonderful. So I know I'm sucking up a lot of your time, but it's fascinating to speak to you.
Sure. Well, I blocked up an hour, so it's really fine.
I love how you see things. It's so refreshing to me, and I'm so excited. So another question that is popping in my mind is when let me see how to say this. Okay. So when you are in a situation where you're helping somebody get unstuck, like maybe a client or a friend or somebody, and they're kind of stuck and you can see what to do. Like you've got, like it just pops in because being a savant, being a visionary like you are, it works in your favor and you can see it. And they're struggling and they're stuck. What's the number one thing that you think that you use to help them get unstuck? Do you tell them the vision, or like, how do you help them get unstuck? Given that they're willing, given that they're willing and asking.
Yes.
Right. If they're unwilling and not asking, there's people I'm not talking about.
I don't even bother with that. Actually, I don't. Yeah, I don't even bother. Like, I don't do honestly. Like, why would I even be doing that? Okay, so actually, it's something I had to really master. It's really a funny question. That's your personal question. You asked me that one. That's a really good question because I deal with that even with my wife sometimes too. So basically, how I describe it is that truth or logic, it's great, right? In theory, like, that is the most obvious answer, but it's managing how to make it digestible was something that took me a lot of time to get down. Like, how do you essentially communicate this in a way that they understand, and they will accept. That's the really
Right.
big one that I had a hard time with, because I would be like, so someone has a challenge, it's like, oh, well, I don't know how, I'm stressed right now. And I can't figure out, how do I get this job? Like, for example, like, how do I, I'm just trying to figure out how to get here. And to me, I'm like, well, it's a logical process here in which you would do this, and then this, and this, and this, and in addition to that, you would support it this way. Right. And then being like, okay, but, right now I'm like frustrated and I'm, whatever. And what I realized is that what I was always messing up was the emotional piece. I would look at it so objectively and so high level that I would not be able to see the nuances and understand how emotions play in to, again, understanding that plan and then accepting that plan as that's, tangible. Because at that moment, the plan is great and we'll get them to where they want to go. But it's also important to, at that moment, address and identify their emotions and then kind of help validate them where they are. So that would probably be the thing that took me the longest, even as, as a psychologist, like, to really understand the importance of that piece. Cause I'm like, you're upset right now and you're all over the place, you're crying. Doesn't matter, because there's a logical plan to fix it. And right now, if you do these things, you will be good. Right. And my wife's like, yes, but right now I feel X, Y, and Z. So what I learned and how I approach it now is saying, okay, it does. And it's pretty, you're great. It's like almost immediate. When I hear the problem, all I need to know is basically, where are you right now? Like, where do you want to be? That's it. And I do a gap analysis pretty quickly to see this is the steps you take to get there. But again, in the where are you now piece, really understanding where you now, not only in your challenges, but understanding the emotional impact that it has on your decision making, on your perspective, your motivation to do those things. And then from there, saying, okay, you are, frustrated right now. Because you're frustrated, and then saying, okay, I understand you're frustrated, and showing some more empathy. I think that's actually my therapist talked about a lot. Like, you show, like, really truly understand empathy. And so be empathizing with them at that moment and making sure that they understand that this is a temporary state and that, technically speaking, by doing X, Y, and Z, it will really help them out of the state. But before skipping it, really empathizing with them and helping them understand that, I understand where they are. So that's probably the piece that always gets me, is the empathy piece. Every time. And my wife is always frustrated with me about that. So I will bypass it and go, let's get to planning here. Let's get this figured out.
Oh my God, that's perfect. And see, I sometimes will get stuck in the empathy piece and then I know the solution, but I haven't gotten there with them yet. Like, I'd be like, because I'm such an empath. So it's like so funny. Yeah. It's like, okay, that'd be the perfect balance right there, right? Yes. Yeah. But see, it's a good thing your wife can help balance that with you.
Yeah.
So overthinking is the number one issue that's emailed to me that people would like to hear about. So you have a fast moving brain that processes quickly, and it also can exhaust you. So when you find yourself in an overthinking loop, almost like you're stuck, what do you do to get yourself out of it? Because there's somebody out there who's going, yeah, well, that's all great. And, blah, blah, blah. But like, how do I get out in the moment so that I can, kind of put my head up and see again?
Sure. So there's a couple of different strategies I use to assist, because for me, we call them like burnouts, essentially, because I'm running in circles and then eventually I'm going to burn out. And for me too, because I process so much, I'll burn out very quickly too, because essentially I'm driving around really fast in a circle. So for me, there's a couple techniques here that I use. For one, to try to identify triggers that will cause me to get in that state in the first place. So again, reflecting on the last time I burned out, what caused me to get in that cycle in the first place? What caused me to, run through all these scenarios and overwork my brain and overthink? Like, what were the stimuli that put me in that position in the first place? And then considering, are there ways to somehow avoid some of them? Maybe not all of them, but if you even avoid half of them, then you're, already taking some of that stress off of yourself.
Right.
So reflecting on past and really considering how I can alter some things I do in the future is a way that I do it. Another way that I do it in the moment, again, is to break away by using something that like external, so like music or working out. It literally forces so much attention to not hurt myself picking up very heavy weight that kind of takes a lot of my attention to that one thing, And this took a long time, but I use driving now. At first, I could not use driving because I didn't want to be a danger to anyone by not focusing on the road. But now I have this little country road that I kind of use. And I have to focus on my speed. I have to focus on, steering in a lane. It keeps me doing an activity that I know for safety reasons needs my attention. So it forces my brain to say, okay, I really need to put my attention onto this. And it gives me a break to really reflect on it, listen to the music, and then say, okay, now let me reconsider. And then the third thing I use is, again, like you mentioned, my community. So I have this solid foundation in knowing that I have my therapist, and then I have my wife who understands me, who understands my limitations. So I don't have to run through either with them. I can simply let them know, like, hey, look, right now I'm going through this phase where I'm overthinking, and as I'm talking 100 miles an hour, they're like, okay, we see where you are right now, and they'll like help me. They'll bring me down, or bring me back down to earth, essentially, and like help ground me. So those are kind of the three things: thinking in advance, trying to avoid triggers, then using some external, something forcing me to redirect my attention, or then asking for help and saying, look, I'm at this point. I'm too far gone, and I really need your assistance in helping me to stop seeing such big pictures and the nuances and planning, and maybe something, that's a little healthier for me to be focusing on right now.
Exactly.
My son will do that for me too.
Right. And I think it's important that to have people in our world so that when we're in that jam, we don't have to explain the whole history. We could just say, exactly. I'm in the jam, and I don't have to give you all the backstory, because
that would just then doing that.
Right. And that would overwhelm, and that would create it. So building the support team around us, personally and professionally, is required when we're doing really well and everything's going great. Yep. So that then when we actually do need them, or they need us, that we have confidence that we can rely on them. Exactly.
And that goes to the very beginning of our interview when I was saying you have to, introspect, think about what are your limitations, what are your boundaries, what are your triggers, so you can communicate to them up front. And let them know up front, this is where you are. So that way you can rely on them. When you're in the state where you cannot communicate as clearly, they'll be able to know.
Right. Exactly. It makes total sense. Total sense. Very wise. You're very wise. And I think your soul probably came in wise. And I think that your life has given you so many opportunities to keep enhancing the wisdom, like in all these facets, And I think it's really, really, really cool. So I only have one more question. But before I ask you the last question of the interview, is there anything that you really wanted to share with everybody that I didn't ask you about? Because I've asked a ton of questions, or something that's on your heart that you're thinking, man, I really want to share this with everybody, or just, I want you to feel complete when we're done.
Well, I would say just a word, maybe of advice would only be, again, something that I kind of talk about all the time. This concept that I always talk about, outgrowing the box that people put you in, but not letting limitations, that you put on yourself, because a lot of people don't realize how many limitations they put on themselves, but not letting the limitations you put on yourself, or that others put on you, stop you from continuing to grow and develop. If you set a goal out for yourself, it's great, but of course, then also plan it accordingly. Right. And don't restrain yourself though to oh, I can't do this because I have this issue, or I have this challenge, or I don't have the resources, or someone told me I couldn't do it. Really just know that you can go well beyond anything that people expect of you, so much so that eventually you'll get so far beyond that expectation that it's you'll laugh out oh yeah, I remember people told me I couldn't do this, ha ha ha, and now I'm doing this, and and that's where I am right now. I think about all the time how many people told me I couldn't do this and this and this. And it seems so ridiculous. People can laugh during interviews about oh, they told you couldn't graduate college. Ha ha ha, you have a PhD. You know what I'm saying? It just keep growing and keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, where all those boxes that, people put you in the past, it would be so relevant. It's you can laugh it off.
I love it. I'm really glad you shared that. So everybody, you're listening to Dr. Diem Mooney, who has, proven that any kind of box another person can try to impose is really just their illusion of who you are.
It is, exactly.
That who you are is much more magical and amazing and brilliant. And so thank you for being on the show. And here's your last question. I can't wait to hear your answer already. If we were going to put a billboard up that the whole world was going to see with your message, it'd say Dr. Dianne Mooney at the bottom. What would that billboard say?
Actually, probably outgrow the box, basically, essentially here. It would be that, really. I guess it's just my biggest takeaway from all of my experiences and just everything that I've learned throughout my life. The biggest thing that I've learned is simply do not limit yourself. Don't let anyone else limit you. And the thing about it is that you're going to, you are naturally going to do that. Everyone has these boundaries that they set for themselves of what they can and cannot do. And once you do that, you say, you know what? My limit is this. I'm going to be able to make $30,000 a year. then you outgrow your own box, and you do that, and you say, you know what, I'm going to, do this. I'm going to promotion. I'm going to go to certification, and then outgrow it within yourself, or I'm only going to be able to get this level of education. Then you outgrow your own boxes. Basically, you be your biggest motivator, and don't ever let someone else tell you this is where you're going to stop in life, and this is what you're capable of, and this is what you're not capable of. Continue to grow. Continue to develop yourself.
Right, exactly. Outgrow your own box. I
Mm-hmm.
love that. That's brilliant. I want to thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your wisdom and just sharing your great personality and all of that with us, because I know I just kind of showed up out of nowhere and sent you this message. And I'm so glad you said yes. And I'm so glad you were so willing to be so just real and share things that I think are so important about all kinds of things, boxes, diversity, life, your wonderful business. And so if you're really loving listening to Dr. Diem Mooney, then his contact information is in the show notes along with his bio, and you will be able to contact him directly yourself. Or you can do like I did, stalk him on LinkedIn. And that's how it rolls. Okay, everybody. So again, thank you so much for being on the show.
Problem.
So remember, everybody, to keep your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star and you're here on purpose with a purpose. So go out there and let your light shine and be that amazing, magical person that you're meant to be. And until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, be well.